share with you today what I have discovered to be the biggest barrier between me and my success and productivity. Maybe some of you have experienced this too, but no matter what I'm working on, whether it be a personal goal, a big project, or simply an assignment for school, I find myself constantly waiting till the very last minute to begin. And I thought I had come up with a solution, the timeline, but while the timeline seems like it would keep me on track, it actually made it easier to postpone my tasks. Take a look at my timeline for this talk. I have all of my tasks spread out before the deadline, and all I have to do is stick to the deadlines that I've set for myself. But those deadlines came and went, and so my plan went from this, to then this, to then this, and then eventually this. I ended up having to complete everything on the same day because I couldn't find the motivation to start my project early. And I knew there had to be a root cause for this procrastination, but I couldn't think of what it could be. I conducted some research and I reflected on my own experiences, and I decided that my procrastination is partially caused by my perfectionism. Perfectionism is defined as the refusal to accept any standard short of perfection. And that seems pretty straightforward, but what I didn't understand was the standard I had set for myself was actually holding me back, rather than encouraging me to go above and beyond. Unfortunately, perfectionism can have many negative impacts on a person's mental health. According to the American Psychological Association, perfectionism-induced stress can lead to anxiety, self-doubt, and the fear of failure. And I knew there had to be a root of this perfectionism too. And so I reflected some more, I talked with teachers and peers alike, and I decided that my perfectionism is caused by what I call bad praise. And bad praise is praise that doesn't achieve the desired effect and instead has a negative impact on the person receiving the praise. So when we receive praise, we experience a dopamine release in the mesolimbic pathway of our brain, more commonly known as the reward pathway. We want to experience this dopamine again and again, and so we try harder and put in more effort, and this becomes a cycle that I believe to be the root cause of perfectionism. I think this is a major issue with high-achieving students especially, because we work to receive praise, and then when the praise is given, we experience the dopamine release, but then the expectations are raised. And each time the cycle occurs, the expectations become higher and higher, until we eventually think the only way to achieve the praise and the dopamine release is to have exceeded the expectations by being perfect. According to David Rock, the CEO at the Neuro Leadership Institute, when expectations aren't met and praise isn't received, we experience a decrease in dopamine levels and a spike in cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone released by the limbic system of the brain. This system controls our mood, our motivation, and our fear responses. This means that failure to meet expectations does result in an increase in motivation, but it can also create the fear of failure. And the first time someone procrastinates, it could be because they were running late, or they didn't have time, or they just forgot. But I think this decision can have two separate outcomes. The first outcome is the project is very bad. The expectations aren't met, the person experiences the cortisol release, and they're motivated to do better next time. However, the second outcome is the project is great, the expectations are met or even exceeded, the person receives the praise and the dopamine release, and the person realizes that they can wait until the very last minute and still receive that dopamine release. And the latter had been my experience for every project, but in talking with other students, they said they had another reason to procrastinate. They said that if they did their best, if they started their project early and the project wasn't good enough, they would be not smart enough. But if they didn't try, if they waited until the night before to start, and their project wasn't good enough, they could say, oh, I started the night before, I didn't try, it's okay. And most people are aware that they are procrastinating, but they still can't prevent it. The once deliberate choice to wait until the last minute to begin becomes a cycle that is very difficult to break, and this is due to the brain activity that occurs when forming a habit. The striatum is the part of the brain that makes decisions based on the perceived reward. So if your striatum thinks that you can procrastinate and receive the dopamine release and the praise, it will choose to procrastinate. In the 1980s, psychologist Anthony Dickinson conducted an experiment with lab rats to determine how certain actions become habits. Dickinson and his colleagues instructed lab rats to press a lever to receive a food reward. They repeated this multiple times, and then they devalued the food reward by giving them a drug that resulted in mild nausea. After repeating these both multiple times, they then gave the rats the choice whether or not to press the lever. If a rat chose not to press the lever, it meant that they had made the connection that the outcome would be negative. However, if a rat chose to press the lever, it meant that they had not made the connection that the outcome would be negative and suffered the result of the drug. And when an action is made repeatedly, the striatum sends signals to the infralimbic cortex in our brain. And with repetition over time, this action becomes a habit because the infralimbic cortex takes over the decision-making capabilities in that specific instance. So this means that the rats who chose to not press the lever, their striatum had made the decision because the perceived outcome was negative. But the rats who chose to press the lever, their infralimbic cortex made the decision and the action had become a habit. And once we experience all of this perfectionism on social media, we're constantly subject to these carefully curated, perfect results that we've developed an even stronger fear of showing imperfect work. Additionally, the rise of instant gratification in our digital world makes it even harder to push through the discomfort of starting tasks early. We've become so accustomed to immediate rewards that the challenge of accepting the delayed gratification of working on a project over time seems way less appealing than just pulling out our phone and scrolling for more than a few minutes. And once I discovered the reasons behind both my perfectionism and my procrastination, I was able to develop solutions to combat both. My first solution is an upgrade from my original timeline. So here you can see it, and I'm going to break down each of those items into more manageable tasks so I'll be more motivated to complete them. I'm going to then take this a step further and assign times for all of my tasks. This will combat my perfectionism because I won't spend too long on small tasks, and it combats my procrastination because I have a more precise timeline to stick to. Don Clifton is known as the father of strengths psychology, and he developed an assessment to determine a person's top 5 strengths. Then, in his book, StrengthsFinder 2.0, he highlights strategies for people with each strength to maximize their success and productivity. According to his assessment, my top strength is competition. And in his book, he suggests that people with competition measure their success based on other people's success, and also to turn small projects or tasks into competitive games. And I've applied this to my school projects with surprising success. Whenever I'm working in a group project, I always try to get my work done first so I can win. And while we may not all have the competition strength as our number 1, I think we all have the desire to win within us. Another strategy I found is a ranking system. I'll write down all of my tasks for that week and then give them a ranking based on importance or impact in the future. So the tasks with the highest rank I'll spend the most time on, and the tasks at the lower ranks I'll spend less time, and I will make sure that I accept good enough instead of perfect, so more emphasis can be placed on the higher tasks. The most effective way I found to combat both my perfectionism and my procrastination is what I call the time boxing method. Taking the previous ranking system, I'm going to assign times to each of those items. And then I'm going to take my calendar and I'm going to put all of those items in time boxes. This combats my procrastination because I have a strict timeline I'm sticking to, and it combats my perfectionism because I can't spend 90 minutes on something that should take only 10. And all of these solutions are to combat short-term procrastination. But what about long-term procrastination? What about those long-term goals that you've always had? Oh, I'll do it sometime in the future. I'm waiting for that perfect time. I believe there is no perfect time. There's never going to be a time where you can just sit down and put all of your effort and energy into that one long-term goal. If the perfect time hasn't come yet, it's probably not going to. So you need to take initiative for those long-term goals. I want everyone to close their eyes and think about something that you're long-term procrastinating on. Then I want you to break that down into 3 smaller, more manageable tasks. When we're told to goal set at the beginning of the year, we're told to break it down and to give ourselves deadlines. But I think that this strategy strategy should not just be for January 1st, and that you can start this strategy at any time in the year. And so once you break that down into 3, when you go home today, break even those 3 further, and then assign deadlines for yourself, so be more motivated to complete them. I hope I've inspired you to apply one of these solutions to your life, or to develop your own to combat both of your perfectionism and procrastination tendencies. But keep in mind that perfectionism doesn't need to be a threat to your productivity. It can also be an asset. If you learn how to utilize your individuality of the perfectionism that you have, you can harness that power and apply it to get even better at things that you already thrive at.